Welcome to a really special episode of The Chill Cook. As you can see, the kitchen, my apartment, decorated for the holidays. Today I'm sharing with you one of my most personal recipes. This is something I make every year around the holidays, and I've been doing it for probably 10 years now. Essentially, I call them Christmas apples. You can, of course, make them for whatever holiday you celebrate. And they're caramel, chocolate, and nut-covered apples on a stick. They're delicious. They're something that would cost 20 or 30 bucks from a specialty store. So they're perfect to give to friends, family, coworkers, the people who you want to show you care about this time of year, but maybe you can't manage to go spend that money for all 10 or 20 or 30 of these people on your list. And it's something that takes a little bit of time, I'm going to be honest, but it's really worth it, and I'm going to walk you through every step. I usually do this over a day or two, come home from work, do one step, and then maybe the next day finish all the apples. So first, I washed all these apples. I actually use warm water, which you wouldn't usually do with fruit, and soap and even a sponge or a dish rag because you want to get any wax off of them. A lot of apples come from the store with a wax coating, and if that's on there, your caramel and stuff's not going to stick really well to wax, so you got to get it off. The next thing I'm going to do is get rid of any big stems. So some apples have just a little stem in there, that's fine, you can leave that. When you have a big one like this, you're going to want to pluck that out of there. It could get in the way, it won't look as pretty. And I actually use a pair of tool pliers, clean them first of course, and then really get a good hold on that and yank it. And if you're lucky, it'll come clean out, which is great. So I would do that for all of these. And then I'm just going to show you a few here and move on to the next step since we're, on filming schedule here. You can find these sticks actually at a lot of grocery stores, even in the apple section. These are specially made. They're a little thicker for apples. If you can't find them, a skewer will work too. It's not quite as sturdy, and you maybe would want to cut it. It's going to be a little longer. Just get that right in the core. I leave the apples right side up and go down the center. Okay, let's see, get a couple of these done for you. Number 2, we'll just do 3 here for the show. Cool. These sticks are rolling away. So next is getting the caramel on them. There is a method to my layers as well. Caramel first. That's going to stick to the apple the best, so if someone goes to cut it later to eat it, everything's going to stay on. If you've ever had one of these where someone does chocolate first, usually when you cut it, all the coatings just crack and fall off, because chocolate's not going to adhere as well as the caramel will. I actually have my caramel ready. It looks pretty darn good here. Very flavorful brown. And what's important to know here, caramel is actually not as complex as it seems like it is. It is, however, a little bit dangerous. You got to be careful when you're making this. The goal with caramel, and let me refer to my notes from my recipe here. They look kind of like the writings of a madman. As I'm recipe testing, I write. Around 320 degrees Fahrenheit is where you're going to start to get the browning, which makes the caramel color and which adds flavor and makes it taste like caramel instead of just sugar. I usually take mine to about 345 or 350 degrees to get this. Okay? So what I did is I put 3 cups of sugar, a half cup of light corn syrup, and a half cup of water in here, stirred it, put a lid on it, and put it on medium-high heat. What putting a lid on it does is, as it steams, it's actually going to wash any sugar off the sides of the pan. If there's crystals left on the side, sometimes this can recrystallize and you'll ruin your caramel. So that's why you put a lid on first. Then you pull that off and you're going to let it come up to temperature. I put a thermometer in it to that 345, 350 range. A lot of recipes online will tell you that that takes 5 or 10 minutes. It takes longer than that. It takes probably 15 or 20 minutes. Be patient. You don't really have to stir it. In fact, stirring it could agitate those crystals and make it harden. So you really don't want to stir it. Just keep an eye on it because it's getting really hot. The corn syrup and the water being in there helps balance that heat increase a little bit so you can control it more. And the corn syrup helps keep the things from crystallizing like I talked about. So it's kind of just there to help you. You don't actually need corn syrup, but that's why I have it in my recipe. Then, once it's hit that temperature, you're going to leave it on the heat, take out your thermometer, and this is the kind of dangerous part. You want room temperature 1 cup of heavy cream, and you're going to slowly drizzle it in. It's going to bubble up because I told you it's about 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Water boils at 212, so more than 100 degrees higher than water's boiling point. And obviously heavy cream is full of water. So it's going to bubble. The steam coming off of it's going to be really hot. Keep your distance. Be careful. Don't get burned here. Then once it's all in, you're going to take it off the heat and you're going to just stir it, and it's going to turn into this beautiful sauce. Look at that. So I am ready to start dunking these apples in here. It's one of the important parts of the holiday apple strategy is preparedness. So what am I going to do with these drippy caramel apples once they come out of here? I got to be ready. So I'm actually going to get my wooden board out of the way. Put it back there. And I'm going to put down some just regular plastic wrap right on my counter, just so I have a clean surface that I don't have to worry about getting sticky caramel off of later. Get it right down. Make sure it's kind of stuck nice so it's not going to give you any trouble. Alright, now it's actually time to dunk. Step 1 of actually candying these apples. Let's see here. Get this in here. Let me make sure you can actually see. Get this in. You don't have to go all the way up with caramel because we're going to come back with chocolate later. Drizzle as much excess off as you can. You don't want this layer to be too thick when you're eating it. Plus, we got to make this caramel work. Make it enough for all of these apples. Look at how beautiful and shiny. Wow, that's nice. And it's already hardening a little bit. You saw how it kind of stopped dripping off of the bottom there. That means this is going to be a real good caramel apple. We'll do another one here. And this is about how far I normally go up. Leave some apple exposed on the top with the caramel layer. Again, drip off excess. It already starts to thicken there. And onto your plastic wrap. Beautiful. So I'm going to just keep going and caramel the rest of these apples. And we've still got actually like 3 more layers to go. We got milk, semi-sweet chocolate next. We have nuts that we're going to put on while the chocolate is still wet. Chopped walnuts. And then finally a really light drizzle of melted white chocolate to finish these off. I carameled all my apples and then I put them in the fridge on saran wrap on just the normal fridge shelves. That's a great stopping point. You can leave that in the fridge overnight, actually up to multiple days. Come back and do the next step. Next step is chocolate and also nuts. What I've done, I've got a big glass bowl in a pot full of water, just a couple inches of water in there. And this is basically a double boiler, and it's for melting chocolate. The water should not touch the bottom of the bowl, and that way it's really just the steam heating the chocolate, and therefore it kind of more gently melts. You're not going to have to worry about it scorching as much. So I'm going to add this in. What I've got here is a mix about maybe 2 cups of melting chocolate wafers. You can get them in the baking section. They are a little bit lower quality chocolate, I guess you could say, but they melt beautifully. They're made specifically for this. Make it a little easier on yourself. Then to that I add about a ½ cup of good quality chocolate chips for flavor. Keep in mind chocolate chips usually have something on them to keep them from melting nicely, so that's why we're doing less of those. Get that in and turn on the water. You don't need it to boil, just maybe get a little bit of a simmer going heat-wise. If you go heavy on the chocolate and you need some more based on how many apples you're making, you can just add more right in even after it's melted. It'll just melt in. While we're waiting for that to heat up, I'm going to chop up these nuts. I always find that I need more than I think I will, so we'll see how this goes. This is about a cup. You can chop them pretty finely. Okay. So this is a stage that is one of the ones that I kind of would like to be able to separate into two, because it can feel like you're doing a lot. You got to chocolate the apple and then quickly get the nuts on before that chocolate sets, because the chocolate is what adheres the nuts to it. To help, I don't know if I mentioned yet in this episode, I have a glass of wine here. It's just a nice dry red. You can check out my episode where I talk about dry reds if you want some more details on how to pick a good one. But this is definitely kind of a process where you're hanging out in the kitchen for a while. It's great to have a glass of wine or some sort of beverage nearby. And like I said, my apples are in the fridge. I'm going to start getting them out and putting them onto plastic wrap on the counter, because I want to have all that fridge space open once they're chocolate covered and nut covered, that I can quickly get them in the fridge to help set that so that the nuts quickly adhere. I just want to say, after that caramel hardens in the fridge a little bit, it's really pretty, shiny, awesome. So a big part of the success of this process is your planning. One thing that I should have warned you about, don't let your apples touch each other in the fridge. They'll be fine. You'll just have to use your clean finger to kind of make that caramel soft and smooth again there. The chocolate will kind of mask your mistake, but that's a good experience that I've learned many times from making these. As I was saying though, having your station set, I know I'm going to pull this apple from here, get it in the chocolate, put it here, let that chocolate set for just maybe a minute, then come here to the nuts, and then have a place to put them back down again. You always want to have a spot to set a molten apple on. Sometimes you find yourself holding one with chocolate dripping and you're out of spaces. Don't let that happen. Okay, so I actually have a bunch more apples even in the fridge, but for the sake of the show, this is plenty. And the chocolate's going to start to melt as it heats up, and you can stir it. That'll help it melt a little more quickly and evenly for you. Something important to remember with chocolate. When it's melted, water is its enemy. Even a drip of water from condensing steam could make it all seize and turn pretty much useless. Still tastes good. You could do something with it yourself, but it won't look good on the apples. So word of caution, don't let it get wet. Don't put a wet hand across the bowl and let it drip in. Just be a little bit careful there. So I'm prepped all my spaces here. I've added even one more plastic wrap area next to the nuts, because as I'm sprinkling them on, they're going to drop down and maybe be a little chocolatey, and I don't want to clean that up later. Chocolate is ready. Beautiful, smooth, silky chocolate in here that's melted down. If you feel like it's a little bit too thick, you can actually add coconut oil. Fats are fine to add to chocolate as long as they don't have water content in them, like butter has water in it, so I wouldn't necessarily use that, but fats are pretty good here. And so the coconut oil will thin it a little bit because that's a lot more liquidy at a higher temperature. I just use this chocolate as is and use my spatula and kind of scrape extra off. That's one of the beauties of this process, and the way I've kind of designed the apple is on top of this layer there's going to be nuts and then a drizzle of white chocolate, and you're going to cover up any imperfections really. So it's hard to make these look anything other than beautiful. So let's go ahead and get one in here. So I'll do a quick roll, get it to stick as much as I can, and then my process is kind of just a spiral spin move here. To kind of come along and just scrape off the excess. We'll end up still a nice, fairly smooth surface here, you won't have a ton of extra chocolate on top. You don't want it to be too thick of a layer. And you don't have to worry about thinning the chocolate out this way. Okay? So, it's not like a perfect smooth layer. That's okay. I'm going to set it here, but not for long. I can go do another one. But if you have that set completely, you won't be able to get your nuts stuck on there. So just do the spiral here again. Smooth that out. Don't get any layer area too thin on the layer here. A nice even coat. I kind of scrape off the bottom and get a nice flat edge there. Okay, now I'm already going to move to the nuts with this second one. This is really easy. Just kind of a light sprinkling of it right over. The finer you chop them, the easier they stick. So keep that in mind. And I just like, not a ton of them, just enough to add some texture visually and also flavor-wise. Try and make it a fairly even coating. Beautiful. Here we go. We've just got one step left with the drizzled white chocolate on top. I'm going to keep on working on these and then see you for that final step. Alright, so I finished putting chocolate and nuts on the apples actually last night. Fast forward a day, everything set in the fridge, I chilled out. I mean, you could do this all at once and finish all the apples, but this show is called The Chill Cook, so break it out, make it 2 days, nothing too intense, everybody can handle this, okay? So now what I've done is melted white chocolate in the same double boiler type setup that I used for the other chocolate. In this case, I added a little bit of coconut oil just to make it flow a little more easily because I'm going to pipe it on here. You could just use a spoon, you could cut the end off of a little plastic baggie, but keep in mind this is hot. It can actually burn your hands when you're holding that thin bag and it can melt through the bag. So I recommend a piping bag. I have a pretty small tip on the end of this. And the approach I like to use, this is completely where your creative interest can take over. I just like to go down the sides in a pretty, haphazard kind of design. A little bit of it will bunch up at the top and help cover up any imperfections. And pretty much no matter what you do, if you follow these steps, it's going to look beautiful. You can do another pattern there if you want. You can add sprinkles or some sort of sparkle while this white chocolate is still soft. It'll stick. Really make it super Christmassy. And then I just put it into like a plastic goodie bag, gift bag type thing. I like to get one that's 5 inches wide at the bottom. Okay, so like 5 inches wide here, because these apples get pretty big and they can be hard to fit into the plastic bag. These usually come with a twist tie, so I put that on top of there. And then I just get some really basic like twine and do a little bow on there. Nothing too fancy or crazy. This is, like I said, the Chill Cook. So easy going, little bow on there. You're ready to give a gift to everybody on your list. And so this is my first holiday here on the Chill Cook. I'm really excited to share this special recipe with you. This is something that I've been making for, honestly, probably almost a decade. And I love to give them out to friends and family, neighbors. It's something that's cost effective if you like to make things yourself. It's heartfelt, it's not just from the store. And it tastes awesome. So, I don't know. It's a win-win-win as far as I'm concerned. So thanks for checking out the Chill Cook, this special first holiday episode. Follow us on Instagram at The Chill Cook as well as Facebook. And visit our website, thechillcook.com, for lots of other episodes, recipes, all kinds of good stuff. Happy holidays from The Chill Cook.